My name's Kevin Wensley. I'm with Sailient, and we're preparing to go down to the BVI. What I want to do this afternoon is just create a series of very, very short navigational tutorials. The topic itself is very expansive, but I want to keep us focused on the stuff that we need to know. So we're going to touch on reference materials that we've got to help us work out where we are and where we're going. We're going to have some basic tools that we're going to need to have to understand. And there's going to be a few techniques that we're going to adopt to help work out where we are, where we're going, and how far we have got to go to get there. So starting with the basic reference materials. So the most important one is your chart. I think a chart is actually pretty straightforward. There's all kinds of detail and all kinds of symbols on here. But the important stuff for us is going to be, am I in deep enough water? So if it's a darker blue color, it's deep water. If it's a lighter blue color that you'll see around some of the coastlines here, it's getting shallower water. If it's white, it's pretty skinny. It's getting really probably less than a couple of meters. And if it's tan, then tan is actually land that dries out at low tide. So it covers and uncovers. And then we have the green, and the green is land. So those colors, if you're using eyeball navigation as we're moving around the islands, actually somewhat reflect what you'll actually see in the real world. So the darker blue color means you're in deeper water. The lighter blue color means you're getting into shallower water. If you can see the sand, the silvery white color, then it's getting really skinny. If you're in the very light blue or the white, and you see areas of brown or tan, that's probably coral. And then you've got the green, and all the islands are covered in trees, and so they look green too. So the chart somewhat reflects what you'll be looking at in the real world. The next thing is you're going to need some tools to be able to work with the chart. So tools that we have parallel rules. What the parallel rules do for us, in combination with this section of the chart, which is called the compass rose, they help us establish courses to steer and also bearings. So I'm going to say just randomly that I'm leaving Cane Garden Bay on Tortola, and I'm actually going to head straight over to St. Thomas, and I'm going to go to Mandel Bay anchorage over here on St. Thomas. The question is, what course do I have to steer to get there? So I take one end of my parallels, and I put that at Cane Garden Bay. Take the other end at Mandel Bay. Here we go. Very, very carefully, because I don't want them to slip, walk my parallels down to my compass rose. And my compass rose has crosshairs right in the middle. So I want to make sure my parallels are touching right in the middle. I'm heading predominantly due southwest. So what I want to do is make sure I'm reading off the right end of the parallels. And here at the compass rose, we have an inner circle, which is magnetic. It orientates itself around magnetic north. And then we have an outer circle, which is true north. And for what we'll be doing down there, it's all going to be operating in magnetic. So we always want to be using the inside circle of the compass rose, the magnetic compass rose. So I can read off, make a little mark, and then just read off what it says there. It says 40 degrees, 50 degrees, 60 degrees. I'm 2 degrees shy of 270, so I'm at 268 degrees. If I leave Cane Garden Bay and I want to end up at Mandel Bay, then I just steer the boat 268 degrees, and eventually I'll get there. All right, so that's the establishing the course to steer using my parallels. What about how far I have to travel? How far am I going to go from Cane Garden Bay to Mandel Bay? And that is worked out using what's called dividers. And these dividers, you go to the scale on the chart, and here we have, so that's 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nautical miles. Let's say I'm going to set my dividers up with 5 nautical miles. Then I start at Cane Garden, I go 5, 10, just shy of 15. So I've got 10 plus whatever this is. and it looks like it's 4 and a bit. So I want to know what the and a bit is. At this end, or the left end of the scale, there is a nautical mile that is divided into tenths. A tenth of a nautical mile is a cable, and it looks like I got 1/10. I've got 4 and 1/10. So I've got the 10, which is obviously the 10 plus the 4 and 1/10. So I've got 14.1 nautical miles to travel from Cane Garden to Mandau. All right, so that's the navigational specific tools. But the other thing we're going to need is a number 2 pencil to do the plotting. We've got to keep the pencil sharp. We need a pencil sharpener, and we may well make an error, so we'll need an eraser as well. I know each of the teams that are coming down have been allocated with their own charts, their own tools, and as long as they bring those with them, then they're going to be in good shape. Okay, so outside of the basic tools and the chart is the cruising guide. So when we get down there, we're going to have our own copy of a current cruising guide. And what you'll find inside the cruising guide is lots of information about different anchorages, where to go, what's available, what's not available, how the buoy's set up when you get there. And all this detail might not be on the chart itself. So actually here I'm looking at Trellis Bay on Beef Island. There's Trellis Bay on Beef Island. I don't have a close-up of that area on the chart, but what I do have is my cruising guide that not only tells me that will give me a more detailed chart, it also shows me pictures and tells me what's happening in Trellis Bay and what's open and what services might be available there. So the combination of the chart plus the cruising guide, we should have all the information that we need. So let's dig a little bit deeper into some of the navigational stuff that's less obvious. So the first thing I want to talk about is latitude and longitude. So the latitude scale is pretty straightforward as long as you know where the equator is. So here's obviously my globe. And what I'm looking for, and here's the Caribbean. And as far as latitude is concerned, as long as you know where the equator is, then you can be, here's the equator, then you can be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 degrees north, and 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 degrees south. I want to know how many degrees north of the equator I am here on Tortola or in this area. So using the globe here, I can see that the BVI are about there. So I'm between 10 and 20 degrees north. I'm closer to 20 than I am to 10. So I'm, guessing at about 18 degrees north. If I go to the side of my chart, on the side scale here, and look closely, here we go. It says latitude 18 degrees, and right there it says latitude 18 degrees, 20 minutes north. So each of these degrees from the equator up to the pole has 60 minutes in it. And each minute of latitude is equal to a nautical mile. So let's test that. I can see I've got 1820 here, 1825 there. So that's 18 degrees and 20 minutes north. And that's 18 degrees and 25 minutes north. So that's 5 minutes of latitude is the distance. So I've got my divider set up at 5 minutes of latitude. I go to my scale, and lo and behold, it's exactly 5 nautical miles. So if I like, I don't have to go to the scale to measure distance. I can do that using the latitude scale. But I've got to use the latitude scale, not the longitude scale. So let's touch on longitude. Okay, so as far as longitude is concerned, in the same way as latitude is pretty straightforward if you know where the equator is, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. If you know where the prime meridian is, which is easy if you know where the center of the world really is, and the center of the world is in London, England, being British, and from the true North Pole through Greenwich in London, all the way to the true South Pole is the prime meridian. And then on the other side of the prime meridian is the international date line. And then I can be up to 180 degrees west of the prime meridian, or I can be 180 degrees east of the prime meridian. So in the same way, I was able to establish where I was as a relative position in terms of latitude, so about 18 degrees. What I want to do now is work out where I am in terms of longitude. So I am a number of degrees west of the prime meridian, and here is the BVI. And so it looks like I'm somewhere right in the middle of between 60 and 70 degrees west of the prime meridian. If I go to my chart and look along the top of the chart, or the bottom, along the top or the bottom of the chart, then actually I can see here I am 64 degrees 40 minutes west. And because the numbers are getting bigger going west, so this is 6440, 6445, 6450, 6455, and of course there's 60 minutes in a degree, so 6455, then I go up to, that's a full 60 degrees, so I'm now at 65 degrees. So here's 65 degrees. I might say, okay, I'm at the anchorage or just by Sandy Spit. And then say, okay, that's great. Well, you give me the lats and longs and we'll come find you. So what I do is I go to the anchorage just south of Sandy Spit. What I can see actually is my anchor sign there that tells me this is an anchorage is actually on one of what is called a parallel of latitude. So this whole chart is crisscrossed, and the lines that run horizontally are called parallels of latitude, and the lines that run vertically are called meridians of longitude. And it looks like my anchor symbol here is on one of the parallels, and if I just run across following that parallel, what I'll find is I'm at 18 degrees 25, 26, 27 minutes north. So to write that would look like this. So $18 degrees, and I said 27.0 minutes north. So that's my latitude. And if it was the Coast Guard I was calling and I was saying, hey, Mr. Coast Guard, I'm in trouble. I'm at 18 degrees 27 minutes north, about here, he would say, okay, that narrows it down to about 23,000 miles. Can you give me a cross-reference? And we go, of course we can. We're going to give you a longitude. And so what I'm going to do here is I go to my little anchor. Here I am. That's where my boat is. And I just need to set my dividers up so that they touch one of the nearest meridians of longitude. And then I do that, and I just then take my dividers up to the top of the chart. And here I can see I've got 64 degrees 40 minutes, 64 to 41, 42, and then it looks like 42.246. So I'm at 64:42.6 minutes west of Greenwich. So 064 degrees 42.6 minutes west. So that is how we talk about locations when we're being very specific. And of course, if you're in trouble and you happen to have a GPS, or you happen to know, because you've been doing some chart work, what your lats and longs are, that's going to be a very easy way of communicating with somebody exactly where you are. Okay, so we've talked about distance, we've talked about the charts, we've talked about bearings, we've talked about latitude and longitude, the importance of using the inner circle on the compass rose, and we've touched on cruising guides. So what I want to do now is move into some of the plotting techniques that we're going to be using to establish where we are and where we're going using the charts.